Hello and welcome back. It is now August 5th. It is a cool morning out here. A bunch more rain yet again over the weekend, varying from place to place. Where I was, we got about 2 inches of rain, but I know there were some spotty areas. Hit as much as 4 inches of rain with some flooding and lots of damage out there. So I think this area got it pretty light so far. I haven't seen anything for lodging or anything, but I'm going to continue looking around. This has definitely been the wettest July and August up till now that I remember for a very long time. This very heavily stressed field of dryland barley, you can see our tiller growth is accelerating rapidly and enjoying all of this wet weather. It is now, you can see our original heads in this very stressed spot are down here, and our tiller growth now is coming up above it. So, I mean, the whole field for the most part is okay. It's just these strips and pieces where you can see we've got a lot of tiller growth coming. Well, here's my first canola field that is over threshold for Lygus. You can see we got quite a few. There's definitely some adults in here, but mainly late instar nymphs is what is making up these numbers in various stages. So unfortunately, this is a field we are probably going to have to come in and spray. Lots more pulse fields need to get desiccated this week. Now, of course, best time to spray something like Reglone Ion is going to be in the evening, so keep an eye on those thunderstorm reports. And of course, when you're using Reglone, remember you're probably going to have to be in the field in about 5 to 7 days for harvest. So we need to be watching that forecast. I know like later this week there is more rain in the forecast, as well as probably some more thunderstorms. So it's a little bit of a toss-up as to when the best time is to apply. Here we have a patch of Canada thistle in a pulse field. This was a field of yellow peas that got off to a rough start, and it allowed weeds to come through really bad in a few spots like this. So we actually sprayed this last week with Heat LQ and a pretty stout rate of glyphosate, and so far we're seeing pretty decent results. Now, the best time of the year to get glyphosate into Canada thistle to kill the root systems is generally when it is flowering, and that nutrient flow is starting to go back down into the roots to replenish for next year's growth. So hopefully we will get pretty good control. Overall control in this field is looking pretty good right now. It's going to be pretty slow to show on the Canada thistle, but you can still see some of the effects on the top, some of the kochia and stuff that is around it. You can see we've got some pretty good results going on in here so far, considering it's only been about a week since application. You can definitely see that heat is working pretty good on here. Now, when you're using heat, it is very important to use a minimum of 15 gallons of water in here as well. We need to get as good a coverage as possible, very similar to using Reglone. Well, not every canola field has been over threshold so far. Lots like this one are still under threshold, just depends area to area. Definitely some hot spots out there. Other fields like this, not nearly so bad. Canola is certainly developing very good with these more moderate, not screaming high temperature conditions. You can see we've got some really nice big fat pods. A lot of this dryland canola looking absolutely fantastic, as good as irrigated canola last year anyways. But we won't really know until we've got it harvested. Canola is always deceptive. It's always really hard to accurately try to judge yield in a canola field until it's in the bin. Here's another look at that hemp field I showed a couple weeks ago. As you can see, it has grown really rapidly. Some of these now are damn near up to my shoulders, so getting pretty tall. You can really see the difference between the male and the female plants now at this stage. So you can see this is a male here, so probably here, if you can see the pollen coming out of that here now. So basically the male flowers just produce these pollen sacs, and then the females have a different type of flower. It actually doesn't even really look like a flower, it just looks like a bunch of leaves or whatever. But basically in here, all these little individual flowers are going to get fertilized and start filling out with seed. I'm not really seeing anything here at the moment, but I bet you give it a week or two, you're going to be able to start to feel some seeds in here. Well, my wheat plots are looking pretty good today. They are definitely starting to show some signs of maturity. Lots of this wheat starting to move into the dough stage now. So there's not a whole lot we can do in here anymore. It's mostly we're just waiting and watching, making sure and there's nothing too serious like some really severe late season grasshoppers or something like that. But for the most part, a lot of the cereals now are mature enough. There's no point really monitoring too much for disease now. The economics of spraying is pretty bad when you figure it out now, but there's definitely some booming starting to come from the west here now. I think we're due for more thunderstorms here this evening. Well, this field has had the barley taken off as silage and has now been reseeded, and this is in oats and brassica as a cover crop. You can see we got lots of brassicas starting to come up here. Things are looking good. We got some oats coming up. We've definitely had good moisture conditions to get things going, so we should have a pretty good stand in here. This is a really good way to get some pretty good quality fall grazing for cattle, but there is a few downsides. The main downside is when you have oats and brassica in here, there is no weed control, so make sure your field is as clean as possible before seeding. Things like buckwheat and stuff like that, there's just no control in crop for, or wild oats, obviously, with tame oats in here. And it also kind of resets your canola rotation when you're putting another brassica in here, because it will basically attract an enormous amount of flea beetles. So you would not want to have canola in this field next year, because the flea beetle population will be extraordinary. Well, this cornfield is looking really good. We got tassels out. It is now taller than I can reach. This is probably a good 12 feet in this field here. So we are silking. Looks like pollination is going pretty well so far. We're not at blister stage yet, but we should be starting to see some effects next week. Here we have a very nice field of canola. This is a Cantera canola. It is True Flex canola. And we are now seeing a bunch of kochia in here. So we did do glyphosate twice in crop here. We had relatively good control at the time, but now, of course, we got all this Roundup resistant kochia that is growing through the canopy, and we're only going to start seeing more and more of it from here on out, which is unfortunate, and that is now the downside of a True Flex or Roundup Ready canola, and why I prefer the stack trait more than I do Roundup. Well, here's a field of second crop oats. Things are looking pretty good in here. Not really seeing any sign of barley yellow dwarf virus at this time, but there is quite a bit of septoria, and there's a lot of aphids showing up in pretty much any cereal crop that is still green, including corn. So it is that time of the year. This does happen every year. We do tend to get a big bloom of aphids. You can see in this crop, when we start flipping these leaves over, you can see we got aphids right in here. So we're probably, at or close to threshold in some of these fields. If we had heads out and we had, say, 20 aphids per head, we would probably be at threshold, but you also have to talk about beneficials, trying to keep aphids under control. If we were to spray for aphids, we would kill all of the beneficials, and aphids would then blow in from surrounding fields and overpopulate rapidly with no beneficials left to control them. So if you're going to start spraying aphids, you better be prepared to spray every week. Well, it's been a few years since we had a serious problem with Schlerotinia, but I think this might be the year that it comes back to haunt us. So lots of fields like this dryland canola field, back at fungicide timing, we decided not to apply fungicide on here because conditions were so dry and the crop looked relatively poor at the time. And it wasn't until, well after peak flower in here that it started to really get a lot of rain. The crop really improved, and now it's a nice, thick, heavy crop. But you can see we got lots of plants in here that are prematurely ripening. You can see this one here is a very good example. These pods are starting to desiccate and dry down. The canola seed inside is not really even turning color because it's not mature enough yet. When we pull the plant up, you can see that stem is just absolutely shredded, and there was a Schlerotinia in there, but I think I dropped it while I was filming here. But yeah, if you can see that white stem down at the bottom and it shreds like that, that's usually pretty good indication. You can also see in some of these stem axils here, you can see the infection right there as well. So not nice to see. Hindsight is always 20/20, but I wish we'd applied a fungicide in here now. Here we have a fall rye field with an interesting issue. You can see all the main heads are pretty ripe, and we are at swath timing. We could have actually swathed last week, but we decided not to because of the weather forecast over the weekend. So we really should be getting this swath here pretty quick. You can see all these green heads in here. This is all tiller growth that's happened in the last couple of weeks, and we're starting to have an issue with that now too, as it has flowered and it's starting to develop. We are seeing ergot in these green heads. So that's quite interesting because rye generally has issues with ergot, and we really try to protect the main stem heads as much as we possibly can. And they have basically almost zero ergot. All of the ergot seems to be on this second growth, which is quite interesting, but it's quite unusual to even have second growth on ergot or on fall rye anyways. Well, lots of the fields of irrigated wheat are progressing pretty well now. Not as quickly as the dryland fields, but that is pretty normal. So you can see we do have some lodging in this field, but it's not flat, so it shouldn't be too difficult to pick up. And we, a lot of these fields now, we're only a matter of weeks away from harvest. These heads are maturing pretty rapidly. This one, you can see we actually have a few kernels of ergot developing in here, which is a nasty surprise to see. There's not a lot of it, just a few heads here and there, but that is something to keep an eye out for in your harvest samples. This wheat field has a huge population of ladybug larvae in it, which is doing great at keeping the aphids under control. I was seeing quite a few aphids in this field last week, but it seems like now they are all under control, so these larvae have been doing a really good job at chewing through them. I'm starting to see a few of them now are even starting to change and metamorphosize back into beetles. You can see this one here is in the metamorphic stage at the moment. This one looks like he's going to start doing it. And here we have a young one that has just basically undergone that change and is now starting to hunt as an adult. Well, one of my first fields of peas got harvested yesterday, so we are down to stubble here in this field here now. We did treat this with Reglone just over a week ago, but we weren't able to get in as early as we could have just due to the weather, but looks like it came off just in time, so it has escaped this morning's rain. Well, it is yet another rainy morning out here this Friday. Not a whole lot going to be going on with this little drizzle that's coming down here now. Hopefully, the weather clears up, allowing us to do some pre-harvest timing desiccation and weed control here this weekend. But right now, it's not looking great for this morning at least. So we will leave you there this week, and we'll see you next week.